Hello and welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to lecture number 3 of this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay 2026. Now look, I need to tell this to you, okay? If you're just watching this lecture, okay, then this lecture won't help you at all for your prelims examination. You have to follow these 4 steps, okay? Remember these 4 steps. If you will follow these 4 steps, only then this lecture series will help you out properly and you will clear your prelims examination next year. What are these 4 steps? Watch the lecture, revise it and memorize it from the notes, ask your doubts and give the test regularly. Watch this lecture every day at 9 p.m, revise it and memorize from the notes, ask your doubts in the WhatsApp groups and then give the test regularly, okay, on time. These are the 4 steps that you have to follow, okay. Between 9 p.m. to 10 p.m, follow all these steps. Just freeze this part of your day for this and I promise you, you will score really well in your prelims examination, okay. Now for notes, tests, WhatsApp groups, well, all these things are available on our website or on our app. To register for Prelims Powerplay, the registration details are given in the comment section below, okay? But if you have any doubt, you can just WhatsApp us. The number is also given in that comment, clear, in the comment section. All right, let's begin with today's lecture. As you all know that we are continuing with Polity in this lecture series. We have started with Polity. Now today we are going to start with Preamble. Now, what's the story? Why we are talking about preamble? You see, the thing is that in the month of June this year, okay, former Vice President, now former, but in the month of June, he was the Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankar. He raised a political storm by saying that the words secular and socialist in our preamble of our constitution, well, he disagrees with them. He says that he disagrees with these words in the preamble. Now, you need to know a bit of background about this. The thing is that the words secular and socialist were not mentioned in the original constitution, original preamble. They were inserted through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Okay? So Jagdeep Dhankar, Honorable former Vice President, says that these words were artificially inserted into India and I disagree with these words. Now, ever since 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976 and with the insertion of these 2 words, socialist and secular, in our preamble, well, there has been a continuous debate. Now, there are some people who are critical of these words. Okay, they are critical of the fact that these words were inserted. And even these critics are of 2 types. Okay, number 1 is there are some people who say, well, Indian Constitution already has so many provisions, so many fundamental rights related to secularism, so many provisions, so many directive principles related to socialism. So there was no need of adding these 2 words in the preamble, okay? Our constitution already has these ideals, so you're just adding extra words to the constitution. This is one set of critics. The other set of critics say that they disagree with the words socialist and secular, okay? They say that we strongly disagree with the word secular. They say their argument is that the word secularism is a Western concept, okay? Plus the definition of the word secularism has been corrupted. Now it means appeasement of minorities. So we disagree with that. Okay. The word secularism has been corrupted. That is why it is now equal to appeasing minorities. We disagree with it. And they also disagree with the word socialism. They say that once upon a time, India might have been a socialist country. But after the LPG reforms of 1991, we are more close to a capitalist country. So this is misleading the public that India is a socialist republic, okay? We are not socialist, we are more close to capitalism. That is why we disagree with the 2 words, okay? So these are 2 sets of critics. Then there are supporters also who support this insertion, who support these 2 words. Now to understand this entire debate, well, we need to dive a little deep, okay? Now, we don't need to take sides, okay? You can take sides privately in your private discussion groups or in your own mind. Well, we are civil services aspirants. We don't have to take sides, but we do need to know, well, the arguments presented by these sides. So today, in today's lecture, we will talk about these arguments. We will try to dive a little bit deep into the preamble, into the amendment to this preamble and the debate surrounding secularism, socialism and everything. Clear? So let's begin today's discussion. The title of the topic is Amendment to Preamble. Okay, so let's begin. So yeah, Polity Lecture 3, Amendment to the Preamble. So first we'll talk about preamble. Some facts about preamble you need to know. This is very important. Now remember, Preamble is just like, well, when you buy a book, any book from the market, the first page or the second page is preface of that book. Basically, it gives a brief introduction of that book. Similarly, preamble is like a preface to our constitution. It gives us a brief introduction to our constitution. Clear? Now, this is our preamble. Now, first let's talk about the origin of this idea of preamble. How did preamble originate in India? Okay. So, first let's talk about origin. So, it was based on Nehru's Objectives Resolution. When India's Constituent Assembly was formed, Jawaharlal Nehru moved Objectives Resolution. Basically, in this Objectives Resolution, it was mentioned what kind of constitution we would make. Clear? So, based on the points mentioned in Objectives Resolution, we created a preamble. So, our preamble is inspired by Objectives Resolution. Clear? So, based on Nehru's Objective Resolution, which was moved on December 13, 1946 and adopted or accepted. The Objectives Resolution was accepted on January 22nd, 1947. Now, remember this. There are a few facts that, well, you need to remember because MCQs might be asked. Okay. First of all, the idea that a constitution should have a preamble is inspired from American Constitution, US Constitution. US Constitution was the first constitution to have a preamble. So the concept of preamble was borrowed from US Constitution. Then we will talk about the wordings of our preamble. Okay. Now, in our preamble, the words liberty, equality, fraternity are mentioned. These words were inspired by French Constitution and French Revolution. Clear? The ideals of social, economic and political justice which are mentioned in our preamble were inspired from Soviet Union's constitution. And the language of our preamble, because our preamble starts with "We the people of India." This language is inspired from Australian constitution because Australian constitution also uses the same language, "We the people." Clear? So these are some of the key facts, the inspirations that, well, we drew from to create this preamble. By the way, on broad level, our preamble was inspired from Objectives Resolution. Now, let's take a look at the wordings of our preamble, okay? So, this is how our preamble looks. Listen to me carefully, okay? Each word is important. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, equality of status and opportunity, fraternity. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do adopt, enact and give ourselves this constitution. So this is the wording. But listen to me carefully. This preamble, okay, is the current preamble. The original preamble was not like this. These wordings of the preamble, well, came into being after 1976. Before 1976, our preamble looked like this. Okay, its wordings were, we the people of India having solemnly resolved to make India into sovereign democratic republic. Now listen to me carefully. This is the original preamble. And this is post 1976 preamble, or you can say the current preamble. Okay. Now, in 1976, 42nd Amendment Act, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, we added 3 words. We added the word secular, which was not there. We added the word socialist, which was not there. And we added the word integrity of the nation, which was not there in the original constitution. So just remember this, okay? And this is what former Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankad, is objecting to. And many critics object this to, okay? That our constitution makers did not want to use the word socialist, secular and integrity. But Indira Gandhi government, which passed this 42nd Amendment Act, they wanted to insert these words. By the way, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act is also known as a mini constitution. Why? Because it made so many changes to Indian constitution. Most of these changes were reversed by 44th Amendment Act. Yet, these words were not reversed. These words still exist. Clear? Now let's get back to the preamble. We understand the origin of preamble. Now let's talk about certain basic features of the preamble because an MCQ might be asked. Okay? Now this preamble basically has 4 features. Okay? And you need to know about these 4 features. First of all, it tells you about the nature of Indian polity, nature of government in India. Okay, like we want to make sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Nature of polity. Then the second portion is, well, what are the goals and aspirations of India or Indian society? What are the objectives of this polity? We need to give justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. Okay. The third part is, this constitution derives its authority from the people. People have given this constitution to themselves, okay? Because all these people who were making the constitution were elected by people. So the authority of this constitution comes from people. And the fourth part is the day this constitution was adopted, that is 26 November 1949. So these are the four parts. Here, so look at this. Key features of our constitution. First, key features of this preamble. First, this preamble tells you what is the nature of Indian polity. India is going to be a sovereign country. That means there is no authority above India. Okay. Before 1947, the British were above India, right? They ruled India. So India was not sovereign. But now India is sovereign. No foreign authority will rule India. We are socialist. We'll talk about socialism. We are secular. We'll talk about secularism because these were inserted later. We are democratic. Everyone knows what the word democratic means. Okay. Elections and all. People elect their rulers. And we are a republic. Now, republic means that the head of the state shall be elected. Who is the head of Indian state? The president. President is elected through elections. That is not the case in UK. Okay, why? Because the head of the state in UK is the king, King Charles. So he is not elected. That is hereditary. India is a republic. So this is the nature of our polity. Then, what are the goals and aspirations of this polity? To give to its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity for its citizens. And what is the source of authority for this constitution? Directly from people. The source, the authority comes from the people. Now remember this key word. It is known as popular sovereignty. That means the people are sovereign. There is no authority above people. You understand? That the authority of this constitution comes directly from people is popular sovereignty. And the date of adoption is this. Make sense? Simple? Yes? Now, this is our preamble. Remember these basic features of our preamble? Okay. Now, one more thing before we move ahead. You see, the thing is that our constitution was made in 1949. Surely the world was different back then. The world was entirely different back then. Okay. Our constitution makers knew that the world will keep on changing. But our constitution needs to be able to adapt to the changing world. That is why they allowed amendment to the constitution. Okay. Now, how can you amend the constitution? It is mentioned in Article 368. But Article 368 gives the authority to Parliament to amend the constitution. Parliament has the authority to amend the constitution using Article 368. But can Parliament under Article 368 amend preamble? This was a big question. Yes, they can amend the constitution, but can they amend preamble? Because if preamble is considered part of our constitution, then they can. But if preamble is not considered part of Indian constitution, then they cannot amend the preamble under Article 368. You understand the question? Okay. If preamble is part of the constitution, then the power comes from Article 368 because Article 368 says you can amend the constitution. But if preamble is not part of the constitution, then you can't amend it. You can only amend the constitution, right? So this question arose whether preamble is part of the constitution and amendable or not. So some key judgments were given. Okay, let's talk about those key judgments. The first major time that this question was investigated whether preamble is part of constitution or not was the Berubari Union case. Remember this case from previous lecture, okay? Presidential reference. So in the Berubari Union case, the Supreme Court held that preamble is not part of the constitution. Therefore, you cannot amend preamble under Article 368. Okay? Though in Berubari Union case, Supreme Court said preamble is not part of the constitution. But, well, preamble is key to open the minds of the constitution makers. What does that mean? It means that preamble tells you what our constitution makers were thinking. What was their thought process behind writing these words? If you understand this thought process, you'll be better able to interpret the constitution in future. So using preamble, you can better interpret the constitution through the eyes of our constitution makers. This was said by Berubari Union case, but preamble is not part of constitution. Now this opinion of the Supreme Court was reversed. Okay. In Keshav Nanda Bharti case 1973, the landmark judgment, which gave the basic structure doctrine that any part of the constitution can be amended except the basic structure. This was given in Keshav Nanda Bharti case. You all know about this. In Keshav Nanda Bharti case, the Supreme Court said preamble is a part of the constitution and therefore can be amended. Okay, provided you are not amending the basic structure. So preamble is constitution, it is amendable, provided you are not amending the basic structure. And this stand of the Supreme Court was repeated in LIC of India case 1995 by Supreme Court. Okay, so remember this, preamble is amendable, okay, preamble is part of the constitution. Now in 1973, Supreme Court made it clear that preamble is amendable and preamble is part of the constitution. Therefore, using this power, well, the parliament amended the preamble also, because Supreme Court made it clear in 1973. So in 1976, Indira Gandhi's government, because it had the numbers in parliament, amended the constitution and also amended the preamble. What did she do? Or what did the Congress government do? Through 42nd Amendment Act. First of all, if you take a look at this preamble, okay, just a second. Yeah. So in the original preamble, the word secular was not there, the word socialist was not there, and the word, just a second, the word integrity of the nation was not there. Only unity of the nation was there. Now through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, you added the word socialist, secular and integrity. Okay, so these words were added. Unity of the nation was changed to unity and integrity of the nation. The reason why the words integrity was included was because, well, in the 1970s, well, some separatist tendencies which were trying to break India were rising, were beginning. So to protect India, to stay united, well, government was taking various steps and they mentioned that through the word integrity. Then Indira Gandhi was quite inspired from Soviet Union and wanted Soviet style socialism. She wanted to move closer to Soviet style socialism in which private sector is completely diminished and government commands the economy, right? So she added the word socialist in the preamble and she also added the word secular in the preamble. So these three words were added: integrity, socialist, secular. Now Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar and many other critics of 42nd Amendment Act have no problems with integrity word. They have problems with the word secular and socialist. Okay, so let's investigate these two words one by one, right? So first let's talk about the word secular. Now listen to me carefully, okay? The word secularism came from the West. It is a Western European concept. But in India, secularism is a little different. Okay, Western definition of secularism is different and Indian definition of secularism is different. And you need to know the difference between Indian secularism and Western secularism to understand how this word secular operates in India. Okay, so let's first talk about the difference between Indian secularism and Western secularism. Okay, so Indian secularism and Western secularism. Now when the word secularism was added, it meant strict separation of church and state. Basically, strict separation of religion. Church means religion and state. State shall not interfere in religious matters and religion shall not interfere in political state-related matters. Complete watertight separation. No interference from the government in religious matters. Religion is a private affair. This is Western secularism. But that is not the case in India. In India, government takes action against religious groups. Government can amend religious laws also. Okay, for example, the Triple Talaq law or Hindu Code Bill. Government can interfere in the religion. Clear? In Indian secularism. But what's the difference? In Indian secularism, equal respect for all religions. So we are not separating government from religion. Government can interfere in religion, but well, it will not discriminate against one religion or favor one religion against other. This is known as principal distance. So where in Western secularism there is strict separation, in Indian secularism there is principal distance. What does that mean? State can intervene in religious practices to ensure social reform, like Triple Talaq or Hindu Code Bill. State does not get involved in religious reforms. Okay, in USA, the government never does religious reforms. Okay, state can provide assistance to religious minority educational institutions. In India, we can. That is not the case in the West. And that is why Indian secularism, because state can interfere in religion for people's benefit, is known as positive secularism. Whereas in West, it is called negative secularism. So remember this difference. Clear? Now the question is, you understand Indian secularism? Okay. The question is, if this word was not added in the preamble, would India be secular or not? The answer is India still would have been secular because there are other constitutional provisions in our constitution. For example, Article 14, right to equality, Article 25, right to religious freedom. There are so many articles in India, in our constitution, that ensure secularism. There was no need for adding this additional word. Clear? Now, what is the current situation of secularism in India? Okay, let's talk about this. So, Indian secularism. First of all, you need to know it's different from Western secularism. Plus, secularism, or the word secular, is part of basic structure as per Keshav Nanda Bharti case. So, any government which comes to power and has the numbers in parliament can amend the constitution, but they cannot amend the constitution to a degree that it finishes secularism off. You cannot take away secularism from India because secularism is basic structure of Indian constitution. That's what Supreme Court says in Keshav Nanda Bharti case. Plus, without the word secular in preamble, there are various provisions. For example, Article 14, right to equality. Article 15, state shall not discriminate against you on the basis of religion. Article 16, state shall not discriminate against you in cases of public employment based on religion. Then Article 25 to 28 ensure religious freedom. You can practice your religion the way you want. So, secularism is there. Plus, this thing that secularism is basic structure of the constitution and cannot be amended was repeated by Supreme Court in S.R. Bomai case in 1994. So, remember these two judgments. Okay, this is the situation of secularism. Now, let's talk about socialism. Okay. Like secularism, Indian socialism is also different from Western socialism. Okay. Now, how is it different? Well, Western socialism, to be really honest, the socialism, when we use the word socialism, well, Marx comes to our mind. Okay. Or communism comes to our mind. In communism, well, the entire economy is ruled by or regulated or managed by government. Private property, private companies do not exist. That is what communism is. India is not a communist country. India does not practice the kind of socialism that Marx or Lenin propagated. Okay, our socialism is different. It is a form of democratic socialism that differs from other models by blending democratic principles with social justice. Okay, in our socialism, we follow mixed economy. Okay, there is private sector, there is government companies also, public sector also, they will coexist and contribute. In our socialism, we believe in welfare state, that state shall take active steps for the welfare of poor, disadvantaged sections of society. Okay, socio-economic justice. And we follow a balanced approach. Okay, well, in that balanced approach, we say yes, individual rights are also important, but collective social rights of communities are also important. So we will balance private sector with public sector. We follow this kind of socialism. Now, what has Supreme Court said about socialism? Because the people who object to the word socialism, they say that, look, the reason why we shouldn't use the word socialist is because now India is much like a capitalist economy. Okay, so why are we using the word socialist? Well, these people are misinterpreting Indian socialism. Indian socialism is not communism, where private property, private capitalism does not exist. Okay, in India, private capitalism exists, public sector exists. Okay, so there is need for socialism or Indian definition of socialism. Now, what has the Supreme Court said so far about socialism? Well, in Minerva Mill's case, well, Supreme Court made it clear, socialism was a constitutional ideal that our constitution makers wanted. Had that not been the case, there would have been no directive principles of state policy. Directive principles of state policy make sure that India is a welfare state. Okay, so our constitution makers added directive principles. That means they wanted Indian socialism. So we can't say that socialism was not required or the constitution makers did not want socialism or Indian form of socialism, so we should remove it. Supreme Court made it clear. Clear? And in November 2024, a 2-judge bench, well, some writ petitions were filed in Supreme Court for removal of these two words, secularism and socialism, from our constitution. Okay? People filed this writ petition. This 2-judge bench dismissed these writ petitions. So secularism and socialism will remain very much the part of our preamble. Clear? I hope we covered all these things, okay? And I hope you understood everything. By the way, do not forget to check out mind maps. Like in the previous lecture, I'm providing mind maps so that during the end days of your preparation, you can do quick revision. So these mind maps are there. Save the notes with you. Take a printout and save it in a file. And save these mind maps also for quick revision. All right? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it is adding value. Be consistent and regular. And do not forget to follow these 4 steps that we talked about in the beginning of the lecture. All right? On that note, I'll take your leave and I shall see you next time with another topic in this Prelims Power Play lecture series. Thank you, everyone.